G'day everyone, welcome back to another edition of Guvs Hero Review videos. We are today going to be continuing in our Rock Bands series, taking a look at the 5-star legendary blue heroine, Jolt, the new generation superstar. So Jolt is available for summons, as we saw from the Battle of the Bands portal, which does roll around once every 12 weeks. It is on an alternating monthly rotation with the Mercenary and Zombie events. So we get one of those every 4 weeks, meaning that Rock Bands comes around every 12 weeks. The portal itself, let's take a quick look at those odds. So there is a 1.2% probability, or chance, that you are going to get a legendary event hero when you summon in this portal. These aren't the greatest odds in the game, let's be real. The lack of featured hero does drop off the net odds for the portal, because when there is a featured hero, it does tend to add an extra percentage into this area here, but we don't have that, so unfortunately our odds are only the 1.2% chance. So what that means is if you were to do 100 summons in this portal, there is a 70% probability of getting a legendary event hero. So that's any of them, doesn't matter which one. It could be Mayhem, it could be Fiddle, it could be Warlock, it doesn't really matter. If you were to drill down and go for a specific one, that 70% probability for any hero drops down to only a 13.9% probability for a specific event hero. That's at the time of this recording, with the 8 legendaries in there at the moment. So if you were to go for Jolt specifically, only just under a 14% probability of getting her in 100 summons. So not the greatest odds when you're going after a specific hero. I did mention Jolt is the latest addition to the Rock Band family at the time of this recording, coming in at the very end of March 2024 or start of April 2024. The event was originally released back in August 2022 with the bulk of the heroes in the portal. There was an expansion in its second appearance in October-November 2022, and then the last 2 appearances, so January 24 and now April 24, we've seen 2 new additions in Melody and Jolt respectively. So we'll just flip real quick back over and have a quick look at her artworks. This was provided by Nom, so thank you very much for that. So this is her artwork. So obviously the new generation superstar, we're sort of expecting it to be that younger look, which we can kind of see. So I don't know, maybe we're going to get a whole bunch of new generation heroes coming in to this portal, and we'll see, you know, this seems to be maybe the counter to Attk, who was the previous guitarist in the portal. So I don't know, maybe we'll see that, maybe we won't, but that is her artwork, so feel free to pause it and review if you so choose. Flipping back over to the portal, and we can take a look at her family effect. So she is a member of the Rock Band family, which means that Jolt will automatically gain armor at the start of each wave, and that quantity of armor is equal to 10, 15, 20, 25, or 30% of her maximum HP when there are 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 unique Rock Band family members in the battle. So notably, they do have to be unique heroes. It can't be 2 copies of Jolt. It's got to be combining Jolt with 2 or 3 or 4 other heroes. So it's got to be, you know, Jolt and Fiddle, or Jolt and Undertaker, or whoever you so choose it to be. But they've got to be unique heroes. The Rock Band family members also gain a bonus when you use them in the Battle of the Bands event. So specifically, they gain a 4, 8, 12, 16, or 20% attack and defense bonus when having 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 unique Rock Band family members in the battle. So notably, this is only when they are used in the Battle of the Bands event. It does not apply at any other stage of the game. So that's those 2 little bits at the bottom there. That's only in the Battle of the Bands event. This wave armor is all the time. You get that no matter where you use Jolt. In terms of her personal stats, so Jolt comes in with a massive 900 attack, 646 defense, and 1,343 HP. So interestingly, that 900 attack stat, it seems really high, and that's because it is actually the highest in the game at the moment. The previous highest was Serpent at 855, and so Jolt's now coming in with 900 attack. Obviously, to counter that massive attack stat, she does have fairly low defense and HP stats, so both of those stats are a long way below what is average, so to speak. So average health is like 1400 at the moment, and defense is sort of in that 700 to 750. So she is reduced in both defense and HP to make up for that massive skewing on her attack stat. So it does make her quite flimsy, obviously. Big attack, small defense, so to speak. Her charge speed is set to 60, which is fast speed, and requires 9 tiles to charge, or 5 ghosted tiles. Speed break will require +5, which you can do quite easily using either of the speed guns in the game. So you've got the +9 Ice Breath Saw, and also the +9 Regalizer Magnum. So because they're both +9 and a speed break's only +5, there's no real need for the speed node, particularly when you factor in that to get a double break, you do have to get up to 74 or 74? Yeah, 74 charge speed. So plus 14, which you can't do when combining that +9 with the speed node. So yeah, completely irrelevant. Don't worry about picking up the speed node on her class tree. On the topic of class, Jolt is an assault class hero, which grants her the chance to wound the enemy, which will deal 60% damage done by normal damage, i.e. tiles and slash attacks, over 5 turns. So the wound damage can stack with itself infinitely, and it also counts as bleed damage. So it means that it can trigger bleed burst from heroes like Aquani or Hatchet. So assault class is very powerful in a blue, or in this case, in a blue stack. So it's of particular relevance against something like a War Machine, where you're going to have defense down stuff and going to be maximizing that normal damage tiles, and then you can get like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You can have 10 instances of wound damage triggering at once. So if you do, 4,000 damage and you do 60% of that as wound, that's 2,400 damage over 5 turns, and then you do like 5 of those, you're talking 12,000 damage just from the wound effect on its own. So very powerful effect when you combine it into the right team build. By way of an actual emblem path, this is probably one of the few instances where, for a sniper, I would actually advocate going for a defense and HP path. So normally, if you watch a lot of my review videos, whenever there's a sniper, I say go attack. Maximize their attack damage. But in the case of Jolt, as I mentioned before, she is a massive glass cannon. So she's already dealing out a lot of damage. Her attack stat is quite high, and we'll talk about her direct damage in a second. But her stats on the defensive side are so poor that I am going to recommend going a defense and HP path. So what this looks like, if we pretend that this is not Leon and this is instead Jolt, so we're going to go the defense and HP route. So anytime there's a choice between the nodes, we're going to pick the side that's got defense stat. On this next branch at +8, healing node is useless. Do not worry about it. It's not going to get you any real benefit, not for the emblems you're committing. So we're just going to keep picking up defense and HP. And as I mentioned before, +19 on the speed node is not really relevant. So if you wanted to continue and keep pumping emblems into her, you can go and grab 19 and 20, going the HP, the defense side of things. But in fairness, I would also probably say you can quite easily stop at +18. Because those last 2 nodes are quite a number of emblem cost for not necessarily the biggest benefit, particularly that +20 node for that 250 emblem. So that's sort of the emblem path I would follow. We would be going defense and HP the whole way through. We're not really picking up much attack. I think the only 2 attack nodes we grab are one here and one down here. But otherwise, it's all defense and all HP, and that's just to enhance her survival, at least a little bit. Try to improve her survival a bit. So that's an emblem path. So you'll have to go back and pause it if you wanted to. Sorry, I didn't really stop and discuss much more. So yeah, the final thing to talk about before we jump into a special skill is the passive effect. So this is unique to the Rock Band family at the moment, which is the passive ability or passive effect. So in the case of Jolt, her passive effect is to apply a 1x attack stat to all allies at the end of each turn, with each stack being worth +2% attack to a maximum of 40% attack. So that was quite poorly stated by myself, but basically at the end of each turn, Jolt is going to give a stack to each of her allies. Each stack will give 2% attack bonus, and you can have 20 of those stacks active on any hero. So you can get a maximum of 40% attack bonus. So stacks are separate to buffs, ailments, and status effects. The only way you can reverse a positive stack is with the negative version. So in the case of Jolt, her positive attack stat is reversed by Melody's negative attack stat, and vice versa. So if you see a enemy Melody on a defense team, bringing your Jolt will cancel that, but then also vice versa. If they see your Jolt, they can bring a Melody and cancel out your attack bonus as well. So yeah, that's her passive. So moving on from that to her special skill, which is titled Thunderstruck Riff, and at level 10 skill and 60 charge speed, it will deal 440% damage to the target. It will then apply 2 stacks to herself, each stack again doing 2% attack to that maximum of 20 stacks. It will then also apply a 16% dodge buff to herself for 3 turns, and finally it will apply a charge for damage bonus or buff, which will generate a small amount of charge whenever she receives damage for the next 3 turns. So a little bit going on in there, and let's start with probably what's the most impressive part of her skill, which is the direct damage. So direct damage is easy to calculate but difficult to consistently compare, because there's a lot of variability that feeds into the damage calculation. So what I do instead to compare damage dealing heroes is I calculate their attack power, which is analogous to their overall damage output. So in the case of Melody, her attack power is simply her 900 attack stat multiplied by the 440% in her skill, and we can see that on this chart it comes out as an attack power of 3,960. To normalize it against all of the charge speeds in the game, we divide it by the number of tiles to charge her skill, which is 9 tiles, and we come out with an attack power per tile of 440, which is enough to drop her in at number 2 on the blue snipers list. So even though she has the highest attack stat in the game and a very high percentage, it's not quite enough to pip Lillian variant for the maximum damage output. It's close. Don't get me wrong, but it's not quite there. And that's on account of Lillian variant just having that 8 tiles to charge compared to Jolt's 9 tiles. So still very, very good sniper. You know, you're coming in number 2 of the 20 available blue snipers in the game at the moment. The only one that's better is Lillian variant, and also 0 point when she's targeting someone with more HP than herself. But otherwise, you know, Jolt is better than, you know, Thunderclap, Iona, Brutus there at 289. The most recent hero that's on this list is Hex, coming in at number 10 with 257 attack power per tile. So, very good hitter, very good sniper, doing hefty damage to a single target. So yeah, that's kind of where she sits in the scheme of things as blue snipers. So, very good damage dealer on that front alone. Moving on from the damage though, because there's a couple other things to look at. So I'm going to skip over the stack and I'm going to come back to it at the end. But the dodge buff is the next thing on her skill after that. So this is where the caster gets 16% dodge for 3 turns. So probably don't need to say too much about this effect. You know, like we all are very aware of how strong and how annoying dodge bonuses can be in PuzzleCombat. 3 turns and 16% is very comparable. It's very in line with most of the heroes that have dodge buff as part of their special skill, and even as part of like family bonus and stuff as well. So the biggest limiting factor for Jolt here is that yes, it is a dodge buff, but it is only to herself. So we're not seeing any benefit of this dodge bonus to any of her allies. Don't get me wrong, it is still good for her. It is going to help combat that poor defense and HP stat by giving her a chance to dodge that incoming damage, but it is also not having any wider team implications. But still, dodge is awesome. And it does stack additively with things like the Chili Suit Chekhov, which gives plus 16% dodge. So that's 32% from those two alone. The next thing on her skill, or the final dot point there, is the charge for damage received. So the caster recovers a small amount of charge when receiving damage for 3 turns. So this is the same effect as what we see on Wyatt, who is a much older hero, where each time Jolt receives damage for the next 3 turns, she's going to recover a small amount of charge. So the buff itself is really great. You know, damage can come from any source. It can be from tiles, whether there's heroes there or not. It can come from slash attacks, it can come from minions, it can come from damage over time, it can come from fiends. Basically, any time that Jolt receives damage, she will gain a small amount of charge. So in a lot of settings, it can tick up fairly quickly and fairly steadily as well. The downside, even though I really love getting charge for nothing, The downside for Jolt here is that, once again, this buff is only for herself. So unlike Wyatt, there's no wider benefit to her team. You know, Wyatt provides this same buff as a 4-star to all of her allies, whereas Jolt, the newest of the 5-stars in the game, is only giving it to herself. And yes, this is mostly a function of snipers. Snipers will typically only provide their bonuses for themselves or do damage and ailments to the target. That's very, very normal for snipers, but it is quite annoying because Jolt has these great effects, but there's no wider team implication. So she loses a lot of her usability in a team setting, but keeps and retains a lot of her benefit as a singular hero. But that's going to be that's a recurring feature with a lot of these things. So we'll move on from that and we'll jump back up to the stack. So the final part that we're going to discuss is her stack, which is granting her 2 additional stacks, each giving plus 2% attack. So there's not a huge amount even to say on this front, you know. There's nothing that's really majorly positive and there's nothing that's really majorly negative. They kind of balance each other out. So I'll start with the downsides, get the bad news out of the way first. So the 2 downsides that I see with this effect is that once again, it's only applying to herself. So even though her passive is giving the stacks to all allies, the actual skill trigger is only giving it to herself. Again, not a bad thing, but it is worth pointing out. And the second thing that's a little bit down about this effect is that because of how the damage calculation works, attack buffs are much more muted in their effect compared to defense buffs. And it's substantially more muted. So what I mean by this is because the 2% on this feeds into the numerator on the defense calculation, it is only a limited effect, whereas a defense debuff, as an example, feeds into the denominator. So a 50% attack bonus is going to give 50% or just above 50% damage output increase. A 50% defense reduction, on the other hand, is going to result in about a 200% damage increase. So it is substantially different in their orders of magnitude because of how the damage calculation works. So effectively, the 2% debuff from Undertaker's stack is going to have a bigger damage impact than Jolt's 2% attack bonus. But in saying all of that, more attack stat does mean that you are going to enhance her damage output, right? More attack, more into this damage calculation means more damage. That's all there is to it. You know, it is really, really good. The other thing that's really a major benefit is that, as I mentioned before, stacks can only be reversed by stacks. So the only real counter to Jolt's attack stack at the moment is Melody, and vice versa. So chances are the attack stat that you gain from Jolt is going to hang around for the duration of the battle. And just while we're on that topic, for information's sake, what the maximum stack for Jolt looks like is at 40% attack bonus, her attack stat effectively is 1,260, just from her base attack, not even factoring weapons and emblems if you so choose to go that route, or other bonuses that might apply. If we feed that into the attack power, it comes out as an attack power of 5,544, which comes out as an attack power per tile of 616, which is the best in the game. Or the best blue sniper in the game, right? Previous best on that chart we saw before was 0 Point when hitting maximum damage at 512, Lillian variant at 457 attack power per tile, and Jolt at 440. At the maximum stack, we're coming in at 616 attack power per tile. So it is very good I shouldn't say when, if you can manage to keep her alive for 20 turns in order to get that maximum stack bonus. But because of her stats, that's not necessarily a foregone conclusion because, as I mentioned, glass cannon, hit her, she's kind of going to fall over. So yeah, overall, Jolt seems like a really great sniping hero. You know, she's got a very high base sniping damage. The attack stat only pushes that even higher, and the dodge bonus does go a little bit of a way towards combating her her stat line. The charge for damage, I don't think it necessarily works for Jolt. It would work on a hero that's a bit more beefy, where you're going to kind of invite damage to come and hit her, but ultimately for Jolt, you are trying to avoid damage at any cost because she doesn't have a lot of defense or a lot of HP to spare. So yes, she does gain charge for any damage she takes during those 3 turns, but it's not exactly a good thing on Jolt to take damage. So yeah, a little bit of an issue on that front. So as I said, the two issues that I have with Jolt is that her stats are widely skewed, like massively skewed. So she is a literal glass cannon. She's probably the biggest glass cannon in the game. So what that means is she has big damage, but she's going to break at the slightest bump, just like glass does. So the other issue I have with her is that all of her effects, they are nice effects, but they are limited in their effect because they are only helping Jolt. There is no team implication for using Jolt at all. So what that means is that there's no real reason to put Jolt into any specific team. She's not going to be benefiting hugely from any other synergies. Her damage output is big enough on its own that you don't necessarily need a defense debuff. You might pair her with someone like Sapphire or Clara just to get an extra attack bonus to really enhance that damage output, but you don't have to pair her up with any heroes. But on the flip side of that as well, she's not going to help any of the heroes that you pair her with. So that's sort of where I see Jolt. So for her grading, I am going to give her a B+ for war and raid attacking situations. So this is, as I mentioned, she's a good attacking hero. You know, if you can control or avoid putting damage onto her, say with like a hero that's got taunt, she can be quite good. She will be able to survive and she can hit once, maybe twice, maybe 3 times during that fight. And she is going to do hefty damage each of those 3 times. Unlike 0 Point, who I mentioned earlier, she's not going to gain free charge when she kills someone, but she does have that charge for damage bonus that is on her skill as well. So kind of a little bit comparable, I guess, but I don't know. In attacking situations, I'm going to give her a B+. There are a lot of heroes I probably prefer to her, but she is still going to work very well in those attack situations. For war machines, I'm going to drop her down to a B-. There's no real benefit to using on a war machine. She's not going to really be able to withstand 1 hit, let alone 2 on the high-ranked war machines, and the stack is only going to be muted in its effect compared to someone like Sapphire, who you're getting that guaranteed 46 to 131% attack bonus, or even, you know, defense debuffs as well. So B- for war machines. For events, I'm going to knock her down to a C-. Snipers are not good for competing in events. They are okay for completing them, but not good for competition. And Jolt is not going to help you too much, even in the completion side of things. For raid and war defenses, mainly war defense, let's be honest, I'm going to give her a C-. Her stats don't really lend her to a defense position. You might be able to sneak her into a wing spot, so position 1 or position 5, where she can kind of hide a little bit and hopefully charge enough to fire. But ultimately, with that defense stat, she's not going to be able to take much punishment at all. In the 3 tournament settings, so we've got Bloody Battle up front. No healing really hurts her because you can't really help her recover. So I'm going to keep her at a B+ and a C-. For buff boosters, I'm going to give her a B+ for buff booster attack and a C- for buff booster defense. So yes, she makes some buffs, but they're only to herself. So she's not a team player, and there's no massive benefit to using her in a buff booster tournament setting. In the charged attack setting, this is where they go from charge speed up to 65 speed. So she does gain some small charge improvement, but compared to a lot of heroes, it's not much. So I am going to give her a B grade for attack in charged attacks and a C- for charged attack defense team grade. So overall, that comes out as being a B grade for her overall attack and a C- for her overall defense grade. And that concludes the content that I have for this review of Jolt. As always, these are just my personal opinions on these heroes. I do love hearing your thoughts and feedback on them, so please do jump down to the comments section and leave me a note. I try to reply and read as many of those comments as I can. If you did enjoy the video, feel free to like it, subscribe to the channel and all of that, but most importantly, share the video around, because chances are, if this sort of thing is useful for yourself, it's also going to be useful to the people you play with as well. Thank you once again for tuning in and joining me. I do hope I will see you again soon in another video, but until then, good luck, stay safe, and happy gaming. Cheers, bye!